But first, and speaking of decline, these race riots have shown how weak some Western governments now are. I mean, weak in authority, weak in even defending their legitimacy against the mob, against barbarians. The protests on Saturday in Sydney and in Melbourne, allegedly against racism, didn't take long to show that many protesters have another agenda. They loathe our institutions, and especially our police. Watch as even young women have a real party shouting "F the police" at the officers there.
The police! The police! The police!
And on TV just today, a Perth presenter said, yes, indeed, scrap the police, you know, the police that were the heroes in the bushfires.
If that's what it's going to take to protect all members of the community and not just a section of the community, then that's what it's got to take.
What, getting rid of the whole police force?
Well, I mean, I'm going to put it out there, yes, if that's what it's got to take.
I mean, stupidity is king these days, but ask yourself, if any of these women had been mugged or worse on their way home, who would they call? It wouldn't be the police now, would it? Because that would be hypocritical after abusing them like that, after wanting them scrapped. So who would they call? I don't know if they actually bother thinking more than half a step ahead, not even that. But right now, a madness is displayed in front of us. The police, we're told, are actually our enemy. And in London overnight, the mob attacked even police horses. And London police, get this, they broke and ran, chased down the street by race rioters, throwing bottles and stones and even kicking one of the officers in the backside, which is a perfect demonstration that governments are losing authority and even legitimacy in the more urban, so-called multicultural parts of Western societies. In fact, these governments and their police forces are so lacking in authority that even a statue in London of the great Winston Churchill was defaced. And a statue of Abraham Lincoln as well. A man who actually freed the slaves, but that didn't save him either because, well, look, what do these protesters know about history anyway? I mean, they are barbarians, the great know-nothingers. And the media is complicit in this, or many are. Here's how the BBC, state-funded, of course, here's how the BBC described what you just saw. 27 police officers injured during largely peaceful anti-racism protests in London. Largely peaceful. I tell you, you simply cannot trust journalists of the left to tell the truth about these protests or their alleged cause. Now, these attacks on the police as agents of a wicked, oppressive state power, they're no accident. One of the demands of the Black Lives Matter movement is actually to defund the police, even though the world now sees what having no police or outnumbered police looks like in a place like Minneapolis, where these race riots started. The looting and the violence, and now, of course, the aftermath. Block after block of shops looted, smashed, burned, locked up. But in that city, a mob of protesters on the weekend stopped outside the home of Minneapolis's very woke young mayor and told him to his face to say that he would now abolish his city's police.
It is a yes or a no. Will you defund the Minneapolis Police Department?
Mayor Jacob Frey answered he didn't support the full abolition of MPD, and before he could finish,
you get a little worried when you see footage like that about what this new bright society is that these protesters want. But sure enough, that mayor's city council gave in. A majority said they were in favour of disbanding the police force, which included the officer who'd killed George Floyd in the tragedy that's now being exploited by far-left activists around the world. And in Australia, We have our own activists determined to make our police seem our enemy. The far left Get Up is whipping up hatred and fear online by falsely claiming that since 1991, 432 Aboriginal people have been killed in custody. Killed, note, that's the word, killed, and complaining that there's not been a single conviction, as if these deaths really were killings, in fact, were murders, which is what one of the organisers of the Melbourne protests last Saturday suggested, saying, protest is not a choice when so many of our people are murdered at the hands of police and prison guards. Now, this is such inflammatory rubbish. But what worries me is that I have not heard a single political leader, not a single premier, not a single police commissioner call it out as rubbish. It's like they lack any courage in the face of a mob, or any faith in the moral status of the institutions that we expect them to defend. What's wrong with them? This is the West rotting from the inside. Here again are the facts. I'll tell you, they won't, but I will. The Royal Commission into Black Deaths in Custody found that Aboriginal people in custody do not die at a greater rate than non-Aboriginal people in custody. In fact, the latest stats show that they are less likely to die in jail than are white prisoners. Less, according to the latest report by the Australian Institute of Criminology. And when they do die, it is not of murder or manslaughter. Almost always they die in jail of natural causes. 79% of Aboriginal deaths are from natural causes, the deaths in jail, or the rest, many of the rest from suicide. Now, these race protests are obviously built fundamentally on lies, exaggerations and distortions. What does it say about your leaders that they don't call them out? In fact, if black lives really do matter to you, and they should, do you know who is most likely to kill Aborigines? It's not white police officers, it's other Aborigines. The number of Aborigines killed by other Aborigines is more than twice the number of Aborigines who died in jail, and most from natural causes. More than twice. And who do we ask? Who do we demand to investigate these murders and the murders of any Australians, Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal? It's the police, isn't it? You know, those poor schmucks that these race protesters are so busy calling scum.